Tonight, we peer through the keyhole of an imposing Victorian mansion where elongated shadows dance over polished marble and the chill infiltrates solid stone like moisture through fabric. It's 1870 in the quiet expanse of the English countryside, with the estate hushed under a frost-laden sky. A lone candle glows faintly in a far-off pane, its flame battling the encroaching gloom. Yet that warmth isn't yours to claim. You're no master of these halls, no mistress draped in luxurious silks and pelts. Instead, you're the figure who ignites those flames, hauls the fuel, and stirs before dawn breaks over a slumbering world. You'd likely falter after just 3 days in this place, with tender palms and a cozy hearth awaiting back home, minus the resilient grit that sustained folks here amid walls that whisper of frost. Picture yourself stirring in the pitch-black confines of a maid's attic chamber. Well before sunrise crests the skyline, the bite of winter reaches you, prior to your eyelids fluttering open or your thoughts recalling your surroundings. The chill has already invaded, brushing your face, encircling your digits, and embedding itself in your core. Each inhale brings a crisp, iron-tanged breath reminiscent of timeless ice. Your meager, coarse cover provides scant solace. Underneath, your form has twisted inward, chasing heat that eludes it. Such is the ritual of every frigid dawn. Such is the toll of servitude. Darkness greets your gaze as you awaken. The space is cramped, scarcely bigger than a cupboard, and divided among you and 2 fellow maids dozing nearby, their frames huddling for shared body heat. The overhead beams slope sharply, mirroring the roof's pitch, while the lone pane is encrusted with rime. Delicate designs unfurl on the surface like icy blossoms, stunning yet merciless. A brush of your finger would bond to the frost. You've learned that the hard way and won't repeat it. This embodies the existence of a Victorian household servant, one that winter twists into a test of endurance. The residence you tend is a testament to affluence and structure. Below stairs, the inhabitants bask in blazing hearths that endure till morning, feather-stuffed bedding in abundance, and chambers where the air stays pleasantly mild. Up here in the garret, though, warmth is mere folklore, a fleeting recollection, a privilege reserved for others. Experts on Victorian home life observed that staff accommodations were intentionally sited in the draftiest zones, lofts that sweltered come summer and turned glacial in winter. Cellars where moisture lingered persistently. This design wasn't haphazard, it conveyed a clear message. Ease was a reward, and domestics hadn't merited it. You ease upright, limbs aching in resistance. The exposed planks strike icy and unforgiving against your soles, stealing your breath with their severity, evoking a sense of chastisement. In the obscurity, you locate your attire: a threadbare chemise, a ponderous underskirt, a gown redolent of soot and prior toil. You don them blindly, hands clumsy on fastenings, fabrics accumulating until you resemble more a walking swaddle of wool than a woman. Still, the frost sneaks through. It invariably does. One charming fact that history buffs relish is the era's fixation on flannel. Domestics were frequently urged or mandated to don flannel underclothes all winter long, as the material was thought to trap warmth superior to cotton or linen. Certain guides suggested retiring in flannel shifts, flannel headwear, and even flannel stockings. The term crops up in household advice books with near devotional insistence, as though flannel might single-handedly shield laborers from the deep freeze. Its efficacy remains a point of contention. Undeniable, however, is how staff bundled up in multiples, praying that amid the extra petticoats and wool wraps, heat would at last emerge. You ease from the chamber into the passage. The corridor unfurls ahead, slim and shrouded in blackness, walls closing in. At its distant end, a solitary casement admits a pallid, meager gleam, faint and unwilling. The boards creak underfoot, so you tread with honed stealth, setting down each step soundlessly. At this hour, clamor is taboo. The household slumbers, and any maid who disturbs it invites repercussions. You've witnessed the fallout. A spilled pail, a misstep, and abruptly, there are reprimands, sobs, and pay withheld. Winter imparts myriad teachings, but quietude comes foremost. Academics continue to debate the true extent of hardship these servants endured in such environs. Certain scholars contend that the communal bedding and relentless manual toil generated sufficient body heat to withstand the chill. In contrast, some cite health documents revealing elevated incidences of chilblains, frostbite, and lung ailments among household workers. Reality probably differed between estates and masters. In benevolent homes, staff could expect additional bedding, hot beverages, or modest hearths in their chambers. In harsh ones, disdain was all they got. The season laid bare the nature of both subordinates and superiors alike. You arrive at the stairs and start descending. Every tread draws you nearer to heat. The kitchen. The home's pulsing core, where the massive cast-iron stove smolders around the clock. The aroma is nearly tangible already. Smoky coal, baking loaves, rising yeast, a subtle tang of prior days' preserves. Mrs. Plummer will soon appear to revive the blaze, yet for the moment the coals shimmer softly, anticipating care from willing palms. Your palms, ever your palms. The building creaks about you, wood and masonry contracting in the freeze. Beyond, gusts batter the panes like a ravenous force. Yet here below, at the foot of the steps, the atmosphere turns gentler, more temperate. You halt briefly, allowing it to caress your cheeks, your hands, your numb lobes. The solace cuts so keenly, it's nearly painful, nearly akin to mercy. Dawn has broken, ushering in the prolonged struggle versus the frost. You inhale deeply, drawing the coziness into your lungs, and advance into the duties ahead. You've repeated this ritual countless times in the past. You'll repeat it endlessly in the future. And lurking within the structure's depths, the chill observes, enduring, aware of its inevitable comeback at dusk, just as ever. Yet presently, you're in motion. And in this existence, motion equals endurance. As you ascend once more to the higher levels, the kitchen's glow recedes at your back. One hand grips a scuttle of fuel, the other a container of lucifers. Your limbs throb prematurely, though the hours have scarcely started. The stairway tightens with your ascent. The sides close in. The overhead beams descend until you're navigating the hidden recesses no visitor glimpses. The staff's domain, nestled under the rafters, as if an oversight, as though the builder wished it erased from memory. You stop at the landing and survey the hallway. The portals along it are simple, unvarnished, their timber etched by decades of handling. The rugs that soften the owner's strides below don't reach here. Instead, exposed boards chill the feet relentlessly, and partitions so flimsy the gales whistle audibly through cracks. This is the maid's resting place. This is your resting place. And during the cold months, this is where the residence unveils its genuine aspect. The garret spaces in a Victorian estate weren't crafted for ease. They served to hold luggage, discarded pieces, or individuals whose well-being was irrelevant. Experts studying preserved blueprints observed that Help's sleeping areas were typically hewn from residual corners, wedged under angled slopes where full stature was impossible. The overheads mirrored the roof's incline, yielding chambers resembling triangular slices. Come summertime, warmth pooled under the slates till breathing grew stifling. In the depths of winter, frost seeped via the tiling like fluid through soil, permeating all it met. You nudge your chamber's door ajar and enter. The area measures roughly 8 feet by 10, divided among you and 2 fellow cleaners. Along the sides stand 3 slim cots, their metal skeletons corroded where parts connect, their pads filled with equine mane or chaff, based on the estate's largesse. Yours hugs the pane, granting maximal daylight in warm months and maximal ice in frigid ones. You've mastered the art of silence on such matters. Voicing gripes alters naught. Moreover, the previous occupant endured more. At minimum, your cover lacks rents. Your gaze drifts to the pane, as it invariably does on such dawns. Jack Frost has wrought a wondrous filigree on the surface, delicate fronds, plumes, and whorled designs that snag the dim silvery rays and diffuse them over the space. You've learned that each icy motif is singular, akin to crystals or prints. A poetic notion, yet poetry avails little against shivers. At present, the iciness emanating from that glass stings enough to bring tears. An intriguing fact that chroniclers frequently highlight is the era's conviction that ventilation was vital for vitality, regardless of season. Numerous guides for households urged cracking sashes overnight, positing that stagnant atmosphere bred sickness and ethical lapse. Help naturally lacked say in it. Their frames seldom sealed well regardless, twisted by time and elements. Thus arose a persistent breeze that infiltrated sleeping quarters like an intruder. A housemaid from the past, penning her recollections in the opening years of the 1900s, described rousing one morning to discover flakes of snow dusting her pillow, slipped in through a crack in the window frame during the blizzard. She mentioned simply sweeping it away and drifting off again. What other option existed? The chill wasn't an issue to fix. It was simply a reality to withstand. You place the coal scuttle aside and survey the chamber. The remaining beds stand vacant at this hour. Your fellow occupants have already ventured below to start their chores, yet traces of them linger. A brush rests on the communal chest of drawers, stockings hang over a chair to air out, and a slightly fractured mirror leans against the wall in one spot. These modest items represent the entirety of what you all possess, though even they are, in truth, the property of your masters. A domestic worker claimed nothing except her toil, and during the frosty season, that too seemed on loan. The sleeping arrangements themselves reveal much. In more affluent homes, staff might enjoy real bed frames equipped with coils and substantial padding. In humbler establishments, they may do with simple wooden platforms or even sprawled on the ground. Bundled in any spare fabric, it was routine for servants to share sleeping spaces, driven not by impropriety, but by pure practicality. Shared warmth provided the most affordable source of heat. On the harshest evenings, huddling 3 young women under scant covers could distinguish between endless tremors and actual rest. Scholars continue to discuss the prevalence of such habits. Certain experts claim it was standard across laboring families, whereas others contend that forward-thinking estates offered separate bunks to signify dignity. Undeniably, though, heat in the staff areas functioned as a shared asset. You pooled it together or endured the lack alone. You recall your initial season in employment several years back by now. At just 14, arriving straight from rural life, you were utterly unready for the biting draft in that lofty, leaky garret. That debut evening, you sobbed softly into your bedding to avoid detection. The veteran servant stayed silent. Yet come dawn, one handed you an additional set of stockings. No explanation given. Those very stockings remain in your keeping. Each winter you pull them on, despite their fabric now being patch more than yarn. It seems affection holds the toes nearly as snug as thick cloth. The air carries scents of wax tapers, sodden fleece, and a subtle moldiness seeping from the plaster. Spots of rusty damp mar the walls, signs of persistent drips that went forever mended. During warmer months, they're hardly visible, but come the cold, they expand, slinking over the overhead like a living entity. Over time, you've grown accustomed to overlooking them, much like disregarding the floor's groan underfoot, the door's stubborn latch, or how the frost burrows into your lungs nightly and lingers right through to thaw. You cast a final glance over the space before collecting your belongings and making for the stairs below. The morning demands attention, and the hearths demand kindling. Yet briefly, you allow the sensation of bedding down in this spot to resurface, the coarse rub of the coverlet on your skin, the warmth of a companion nearby, the rhythm of breaths in the shadows. It's far from cozy, scarcely heated, but well known. And amid these circumstances, the known offers its unique solace. The hallway engulfs you once more, shadowy and confined, as you start downward. In your wake, the upper story quiets, poised for dusk's arrival, and dusk will come, as it invariably does. Winter bides its time, and the roofline holds on to every detail. The steps guide you lower, each one protesting with a squeak, until the atmosphere shifts. It turns denser, more laden, infused with the sharp tang of dying embers and a hint of something richer, fresh loaves maybe, or their lingering echo. Your steps trace this route instinctively. They lead beyond the butler's storage, beyond the prep area stocked with jars of conserves gleaming like treasures, beyond the washroom where gleaming vessels dangle in neat lines. Finally, you arrive where the season's hold slackens, the heart of operations. Crossing the threshold, a rush of heat envelops you like a tide. It caresses your cheeks at first, then your fingers, seeping past your garments to thaw the icy hollows within. The kitchen pulses with vitality, a robust, unwavering glow, unlike the timid sputter of an upstairs blaze, a fire that has endured from the prior day and will persist into the next. The massive cast-iron stove commands the opposite wall, its face polished ebony, its core pulsing crimson through the wide grate. This space forms the true core of the estate. The lavish drawing rooms, refined sleeping chambers, and ornate flights of stairs serve merely as flourishes. Here, life is sustained for all. The head cook is present, as ever, gliding from the stove to the broad oak work table with the precision of vast experience, thousands of repetitions behind her. She goes by Mrs. Plummer, but everyone simply addresses her as cook. She commands this kitchen with a commanding presence that commands respect even from the housekeeper. A sturdy figure, she has wide shoulders and robust arms, her hands equally adept at kneading bread or chopping with a cleaver. Heat has colored her cheeks red, while stray strands of gray hair slip out from under her cap. She doesn't glance your way when you step in, yet she's aware of your arrival. Cook senses everything. Now the aromas envelop you completely, a complex tapestry of smells narrating countless dishes. Sharp onion notes mingle with the deep savor of baking meat, alongside the cozy hint of sugar and cinnamon lingering from last night's dessert. Underneath lies the constant reek of coal, that faint sulfurous edge that permeates every corner of a Victorian kitchen. Inhaling deeply, you sense your hunger awaken. Dawn is far off, but this space whispers assurances your body eagerly accepts. Historians often highlight the immense size of those Victorian kitchen ranges. In lavish estates, these iron behemoths spanned 8 or 10 feet, boasting several ovens, hot plates, and warming areas. They devoured coal by the hundredweight and demanded non-stop vigilance to hold steady heat. Aera's household guide likened the range to a demanding lover, craving extra fuel, endless scrubbing, and unwavering care. More than any other fixture, the quip held a kernel of reality. Staff who slacked on it risked chilly dinners, frayed nerves, and swift termination. You settle close to the hearth, extending your chilled hands toward the blaze. The warmth bites sharply at first, your numb fingers mistaking it for hurt. Gradually, though, it eases into tolerability, then comfort, and finally a bliss that's nearly overwhelming. For an instant, you shut your eyes and just absorb it. This brief interlude by the fire stands as the pinnacle of indulgence in your routine. Brief pauses like this, snatched amid the chill before duties commence, you've grown wise to seizing them. Such respites are scarce. More staff trickle in, pulled by the identical pull that brought you. A scullery maid lugs in a pail of water, her face numb from the outdoor pump. A footman stoops under the lintel, rubbing his boots and huffing on his palms. The housekeeper sweeps past too, lingering only to thaw briefly en route to her tasks. Words aren't exchanged about it. None are required. The kitchen serves as a haven, and its unspoken code is clear. Absorb the heat swiftly and move on. Duties await. Scholars still quarrel over the hours servants devoted to kitchens compared to the rest of the manor. Certain voices claim kitchen workers seldom strayed from their turf, whereas higher-ups like ladies' maids and valets avoided the lower levels entirely. Counterpoints hold that the kitchen's glow turned it into a winter hub for the whole staff, with rigid departmental divides softening amid the frost. Undeniably, though, it embodied a vital refuge, a zone impervious to the freeze, where flames defied status, allowing even the humblest pot scrubber to linger by the stove and briefly reclaim a sense of humanity. With a solid clunk that startles the group, Cook plunks a pot of porridge on the table. "Eat," she orders, that lone syllable wielding more weight than any lecture. Obedience comes without hesitation. The oatmeal is dense and drab, laced with a touch of treacle and flecked with raisins. It's far from refined fare. Nothing in the servants' quarters ever qualifies as such, but its heat is paramount at this hour. As you ladle it in, the warmth seeps deep, banishing the voids carved by the cold. Every spoonful claims a minor triumph. Each gulp nudges the winter further away. One Victorian cook's journal recounts how staff would cradle their bowls against their torsos post-meal, savoring the fading heat on their hands before resuming toil. The scene evokes quiet affection, these worn-out souls hugging their vacant vessels as if priceless, milking the final bits of solace prior to the icy halls overhead. The entry also notes cook occasionally keeping a kettle simmering on the range, not for brewing, but so hands could hover near it through the morning. Modest gestures, unseen by the upstairs folk, yet etched in memory long after by the beneficiaries. You polish off the porridge and push the bowl away. The glow in your core begins to wane, but it'll suffice for now. Upstairs, hearths await kindling. Buckets of water demand hauling. Rugs call for brushing. The estate stirs to life, trailing the family's demands. Lingering here indefinitely isn't an option, tempting as it is. The kitchen's solace proves fleeting. The chill endures. Yet prior to leaving, you glance once more at the stove. Its radiance mirrors off the brass utensils, flickers over the lime-washed surfaces, and casts a warm hue of amber and yellow on the countenances of your fellow staff. The cook has returned to her duties, kneading batter with firm grips, her exhalations ascending in the warmth like a silent invocation. The kitchen girl is now scrubbing the previous day's cookware, her forearms submerged in soapy suds, slick with fat. The valet has disappeared, likely off to buff the silverware in some chilly chamber distant from here. The morning has truly started, and nothing can halt its momentum. You pivot toward the exit, sensing the chill descend right away, a barrier of frost lurking just past the frame. The hallway extends onward, gloomy and inhospitable, guiding you toward the realm of ice and toil. You draw in air, straighten your posture, and cross the threshold. At your back, the kitchen shines like a lingering spark amid the gloom. You hold on to its heat inside, nestled against your chest, a recollection of blaze to carry you until your next visit. And return you shall. You invariably do. Within these walls, the kitchen isn't merely a space. It's an assurance, evidence that amid winter's grip, heat persists in some hidden corner. The passage engulfs you entirely. One instant, you're enveloped in the kitchen's golden light. The next, you're traversing obscurity, the frost clinging to your flesh like a ravenous force. Your breaths mist in front of you. Every puff forms a fleeting specter that dissolves into the blackness. In one grasp, you hold an iron pail brimming with fuel. In the other, a timber case holding lucifers, tinder, and a creased periodical singed along the borders from the day before. These are your instruments of labor. These are the arms you bear into the fray each dawn. Your foe is the season's bite, and the field is every hearth throughout the estate. Kindling flames isn't mere chores. It's a rite, a solemn observance conducted quietly in the shadows, echoed from chamber to chamber well before the household rouses from their downy slumbers. The hearths demand ignition, the spaces require coziness, and the help must remain unseen. When the Lord awakes, the manor ought to seem eternally thus, toasty, inviting, seamless. The effort enabling it should vanish without a mark. You function as a specter delivering fervor, an outline dispelling the freeze. And should you perform adeptly, none shall detect your presence. You ascend the servant's staircase, your footfalls softened by countless repetitions. The pail clinks gently against your thigh at every rise, depositing streaks of icy grit on your skirt that you'll need to dust away afterward. The steps are tight and precipitous, crafted for staff to dart between levels unseen. No panes here, no tapers, just the subdued ashen gleam filtering through gaps in the paneling. You proceed by instinct, tallying rises, probing for the platform with your foot. 13 to the ground level, 14 to the upper. Those figures are ingrained in your sinews, as innate as your pulse. First on your roster is the morning parlor, where the mistress enjoys her morning meal. You nudge the door ajar and glide in, gliding with the honed quietude of one who's repeated this ritual endlessly. The space lies in shadow, drapes sealed against the frosty sunrise. Yet you discern the outlines of furnishings, the settee near the pane, the scribe's table in the alcove, the hearth gaping vacant and sooty on the opposite side, the atmosphere icy, laden with the residue of prior cinders. You drop to your knees before the grate and commence your task. A fascinating note that scholars often highlight is the exact order of actions needed to kindle a Victorian blaze. Start by removing the old soot from the night before, using a tiny spade to shovel it into a pail while avoiding any airborne particles. Next, build the base with wadded newsprint at the floor, then slender twigs of starter wood positioned in a deliberate crisscross. Follow with the fuel, stacked deliberately, biggest chunks below, tiniest above, forming a frame that will seize and sustain the blaze. Lastly, you apply the lucifer. The entire procedure spans 5 to 10 minutes each hearth, and in a grand residence. There could be 20 or 30 such spots to ignite prior to the first meal. The calculations alone weary, the actuality even more so. You scratch a lucifer and observe the spark ignite within the void. Briefly, it's the sole illumination in the chamber, a tiny quivering orb cradled in your palms. You apply it to the newsprint and witness the blaze take hold, advancing gradually initially, then accelerating, curling up through the twigs until it grasps the fuel. The tang of brimstone assaults your senses, chased by the keener aroma of scorching sheets. Then emerges the richer soil-like odor of fuel starting to smolder. You settle onto your haunches and observe the blaze expand, sensing the initial subtle wave of heat on your cheeks. This is the instant that fuels your resolve. This modest triumph recurs endlessly across one chamber after another. The chill withdraws. The blaze presses forward. And for those brief instants, you transform from mere domestic help into an artist summoning illumination from the void. Historians remain divided on the exact duration servants devoted to fire-tending tasks. Certain calculations indicate that during winter, igniting and sustaining blazes might occupy 3 or 4 hours of a housemaid's daily routine. Counter-arguments propose that duties were shared among several staff members, easing the load somewhat. Undeniably, though, flames represented an essential requirement rather than a luxury, with the full onus resting on those working downstairs. In her autobiography, one ex-servant described how her fingers stayed perpetually smudged with ash from coal handling, and the odor of soot lingered in her locks despite frequent scrubbing. The blazes, she noted, integrated into her very being. She bore them internally, even in slumber. You stand from the morning room hearth, collecting your implements. The blaze now snaps and pops, sending flickering silhouettes over the paneling. Yet you must press on rather than linger in its glow. Additional spaces await, more hearths to clean, more infernos to kindle. You glide out as quietly as you arrived, easing the door shut with a gentle latch. The hallway lingers dim and frosty, yet somehow less daunting. You've claimed the initial skirmish. Just a dozen others remain. The subsequent space is the library, where the master peruses his periodicals and handles affairs. This hearth looms bigger, more imposing, bordered by sculpted stone that shimmers subtly in the gloom. You drop to your knees and enact the ceremony once more. Remnants, newsprint, tinder, fuel, spark. The gestures flow instinctively by now, your fingers operating on autopilot, tracing a groove etched by endless practice. Scratch, apply, pause, observe. The ignition takes hold, and the chamber inhales anew. You nearly sense its grateful exhale as the frost eases away. An odd caution in a Victorian domestic guide cautions against starting fires prematurely, lest the fumes interrupt the household's repose. It advises delaying until roughly half an hour prior to the family's usual awakening, then hastening to heat the key areas. Such counsel exposes the precarious equilibrium servants had to strike. Blazes needed to ignite soon enough for comfort, but not prematurely enough to draw notice. By this reasoning, the ideal flame seems eternally present. Instant coziness, enchanted fervor, all traces of the toil vanished. You navigate the manor like a stream, drifting between spaces, trailing heat in your path. The dining hall, the sitting area, the office. Every hearth claims your focus, your diligence, your soot-marked palms. The pail eases in weight as you ascend, the supply dwindling with each bin you replenish. When you arrive at the family's sleeping quarters above, your back throbs and your joints protest from the repeated crouching. Still, you persist. Halting isn't an option. The gentleman's chamber requires toasty air before his stirring. The lady's preparation area needs to be inviting before she summons her attendant. The young one's playroom must feel snug prior to their awakening. These fires aren't elective. They form the cost of your position, the medium of devotion, the implicit pact tethering you to this estate. You kindle the final blaze in the playroom and lean away, eyeing how the tongues leap and expand. A youngster's hobby horse occupies the edge, throwing an eerie outline onto the plaster. A pile of illustrated tales sits on a low shelf, their covers frayed from affectionate use. The space feels serene, pure, insulated from the freeze gripping the dwelling elsewhere. Soon as the little ones rouse, they'll remain oblivious to your presence. They'll give no thought to the palms that delivered their comfort. They'll merely embrace it, like all else, as their inherent due. You collect your depleted container and your striker case, then exit the playroom. The passage brightens slightly, with the initial soft glow of daybreak filtering via the panes at both extremes. The residence starts to rouse. Footfalls echo from below. Whispers blend, and the faint jangle of cookware rings from the scullery. Your labors here conclude, but the hours stretch ahead. Linens to arrange, surfaces to polish, pitchers to haul. The fires demand oversight all day long, nourished and revived and guarded like fretful offspring. The season insists on unrelenting vigilance. It refuses true respite. Yet at this instant, solely this one, you halt atop the staircase and glance along the hall. Beyond every sealed portal, a blaze endures. Heat permeates icy interiors, repelling the rime, challenging the weather. You achieved that. Your touch, your effort, your subdued ceremony amid shadows. The manor pulses with life, thanks to you. And within that realization lies a hint, nearly pride itself. You draw in air, register the usual twinge across your upper back, and commence your downward steps. The morning looms ahead, demanding fresh coal for the fires, just as it always does. Empty now, the bucket sways lightly beside you on the back stairs as you make your way down. Its burden has vanished, leaving it feather light. Yet your arms hold on to the memory. Your shoulders do too. The body archives every load hauled, every ascent made, every grate loaded and blaze kindled. You've come to interpret that archive through the soreness in your muscles, the rigidity in your joints, the distinct pulsing ache that takes root between your shoulder blades come mid-morning. It's the script of servitude inscribed on sinew and skeleton. In winter, those symbols never vary. Chill, haul, ascend, endure. You set the bucket back in the coal cellar and linger briefly in the hallway, allowing your arms to dangle freely. The mansion stirs completely now, buzzing with the rush of life you sense more than witness. Footfalls echo above. Doors swing shut and latch. Faint voices drift from afar as the family rouses itself. Your fires crackle steadily. Your efforts remain unseen. And in this brief interlude before the cycle of tasks resumes, your mind drifts to the odd contraptions that sustain this home's heat. The Victorians proved resourceful in waging war on the chill. They had no choice. Central heating, in the modern sense, was absent or confined to the opulent estates and pioneering establishments. For the rest, comfort meant a mosaic of inventions and methods pieced together across generations, each contrived to fend off the freeze in its modest fashion. You've wielded nearly all of them. You've sworn at nearly all of them, but their ingenuity shines through, even in moments of breakdown. The coal grate forms the core of it all. You're intimately acquainted with it. The iron cradle cradling the glowing fuel, the fireback directing warmth outward, the tray underneath trapping the ash. Victorian hearths embodied a precision unknown to prior eras, their dimensions fine-tuned to boost efficiency while curbing billows of smoke. The register grate, with its tunable vent, let attendants regulate the draft and thereby the fire's vigor. On paper, it seemed refined. In reality, it often translated to kneeling for hours at dawn, tweaking controls and prodding reluctant embers. Even so, sans these grates, the dwelling would stand untenable. They pulse as the vital cores of each chamber, circulating heat into corners that would otherwise turn to ice. One quirk that scholars delight in recounting is the Victorian warming pan, a pole-handled vessel brimming with embers meant to glide under covers prior to bedtime. You've wielded them endlessly, gliding them over chilled sheets until the cloth retains a bearable glow. The secret lies in the moment. Too soon, and the coziness ebbs before the occupant slips in. Too tardy, and complaints arise about frigid bedding. Some domestic guidebook advises preheating exactly 15 minutes ahead of retirement, a standard that presumes impeccable foresight and telepathic skills from the staff. You've honed the art of approximation. You've mastered the hunch. And on misjudged occasions, you've mastered the art of contrition. Kin to the warming pan is the bed warmer, a flask-like pot of earthenware or metal, brimming with scalding water and sealed securely. These nestled under quilts to dispense enduring heat overnight, their glow seeping out gradually as slumber took hold. Maids dubbed them pigs, for reasons lost to time. Maybe their plump, weighty forms that gravitated to the bed's chilliest nook, or perhaps the faint groans they emitted as the liquid within swelled and shrank. Regardless, the moniker endured. Over your tenure, you've primed countless such pigs, ferrying pots from the scullery, decanting with caution to spare your skin, then sheathing them in wool to shield your master's flesh. The household seldom ponders the toil behind it. They register only the absence, the chill where warmth should be, the oversight in foreseeing their ease. Scholars still spar over these tools' true merit. Some contend that warming pans and bed warmers rendered frosty evenings endurable, weaving frozen linens into havens of solace. Others counter that their output was ephemeral, enduring a mere hour or so before dissipating, with dawn's bite inevitably reclaiming the space. Likely, efficacy hinged on the object's craftsmanship, the quilt's heft, and the bedder's resolve to huddle in the sole toasty patch. Undeniable, though, is the Victorian steadfast reliance on such humble aids, viewing them as necessities, not indulgences. A home lacking warming pans was one ill-equipped for the season, and in Victorian judgment, an ill-equipped home spelled outright shame. In addition to the bedchamber, various contraptions battled the chill in their distinctive manners. Foot warmers, compact metal containers packed with glowing coals, were positioned under writing desks and supper tables, enabling the household to rest their feet in comfort even as their torsos endured the drafty air. You've watched the lady of the manor perch for long stretches with her feet elevated on such a gadget, her petticoats arranged just so to capture the ascending warmth. From afar, it almost seems absurd, an adult woman hunched over a pan of coals, resembling a brooding bird on her clutch. Yet you wouldn't voice that observation. You wouldn't even crack a grin. The freeze drives folks to extremes, and those in dire straits have little patience for humor. An odd entry in a Victorian inventor's directory touts something known as the body warmer, a shallow contoured metal vessel meant to hug the body, loaded with scalding water and strapped under garments. The listing vows liberation from the season's clutches and portable coziness, but it failed to gain traction, maybe due to its bulkiness, maybe from occasional spills. Or perhaps because, despite their cleverness, the Victorians grasped that binding a hot water holder to one's front court disaster. Certain innovations outpace their era. Others amount to misguided notions cloaked in hopeful prose. Among the riskiest tools you've come across is the brazier, a wide-mouthed metal pan brimming with smoldering charcoal, deployed to heat spaces without dedicated hearths. You've spotted them in the staff areas, garret chambers, and the chilliest, most frugal nooks of the estate. They function in a limited sense. Their output of heat arrives swiftly and genuinely, but the peril matches it. The charcoal releases deadly vapors that can fell a resting person without a hint, saturating the space with unseen toxins as the blaze flickers harmlessly underneath. You've caught tales of staff discovered lifeless in sleep, with the braziers still aglow nearby, their countenances serene as if the end arrived gently. These accounts circulate as cautions, handed down from veteran workers to novices like a somber legacy. Avoid dozing near a lit brazier. Leave the door ajar. Don't rely on the glow to shield you. You brush aside the notion and press on along the hallway. The manor brims with gadgets crafted to defy the frost, some ingenious, some misguided. Each demands effort, hands to load them, transport them, clear them, and reload them endlessly. To the residents, coziness feels inherent, supplied by the home much like breathable air or daylight. They overlook the pots set to boil, the loads of fuel hauled, the vessels warmed and rewarmed across the hours. They miss you gliding through the dim passages, bearing your loads, sustaining the engine of ease, scoop by laborious scoop. But you perceive it clearly. You sense it in your strained limbs, your sore back, your roughened, soot-marked palms. Their comfort isn't enchantment. It's toil. It's your doing, and while the cold season endures, that truth persists. You go by the green baize portal that divides the help's wing from the owner's territory. With that one stride, everything shifts. The passage ahead broadens. The overhead beams soar. The atmosphere carries hints of beeswax sheen and lavender scent. Framed artworks adorn the panels in ornate gold. A plush rug muffles your tread. And the air's warmth. It swells like an exhale of ease. Here dwells the true heat. Here it has dwelled forever. The owner's portion of the house inhabits a separate climate altogether. You've traversed this boundary countless times. Still, the disparity hits you anew. In your domain, the draft infiltrates cracks in the planks and panes, lodging deep in your frame like an unwelcome lodger. In theirs, blazes roar in every space, their radiance pulsing out intangible surges against your flesh. The divide isn't haphazard, it's deliberate. In a Victorian home, heat adheres to the same principles as all else. It ascends to affluence, to status, to those whose ease counts most, and any spillover below arrives in scant measures, barely detectable. This is the ladder of warmth, and you're well aware of your rung. The Lord's sleeping quarters claim the finest fuel, substantial enduring chunks that sustain the blaze for extended periods. His hearth ignites at dawn's first light and receives its final tending at dusk's close. The room's heat seldom wanes past tolerability, upheld by attendants who inspect the firebox regularly, replenishing it before the embers dim. His linens get toasted via copper vessels. His robe toasts by the flames prior to his stirring. His bathing liquid arrives piping hot in a fine china jug. He rouses amid warmth, retires amid warmth, and navigates his hours enveloped in an unseen veil of solace that trails him across the chambers. The lady claims comparable indulgences, albeit in modestly scaled rooms with somewhat humbler fires. The young one's playroom stays sufficiently toasty to ward off ailments. The governess observes the children with worried glances, well aware that an ill child invites accusations, and a chilly nursery invites scrutiny. Visitor quarters get fires lit solely during stays, their hearths blazing upon arrival and dying out as soon as guests leave. Each space in the house holds its designated role, its quota of coal, its portion of the limited heat available. Historians often highlight the meticulous records kept by Victorian head housekeepers on fuel usage. Coal cost a fortune, so every piece was logged in books next to tallies for candles, soap, and flour. Certain homes doled out fixed quantities per area, allowing senior staff modest blazes in their spaces, while junior ones got nothing. A preserved ledger from 1865 details the weekly coal distribution by room, showing the master's study got triple the amount of the whole servants' hall. Those figures convey a tale beyond mere description. Heat represented affluence, parceled out based on status. Down at the base of this ladder, in the chilliest spots with the tiniest flames, or none whatsoever, the most junior staff persevered, the scullery maid facing the harshest conditions. You've witnessed her hands chapped and sore from scrubbing pots in water that begins warm but chills rapidly. Her territory is the scullery, a drafty stone-paved area at the rear of the manor where winds whistle unchecked, and the sole warmth stems from the liquid she handles. Come midwinter, her digits swell from the frost. The flesh cracks and weeps at the joints. She binds them in scraps of cloth when possible, yet the cloth soaks through, the damp turns icy, and the ice aggravates it all. She is 15. She entered service 2 years prior. Those winter marks will linger on her for life. Scholars still debate the extent to which masters and mistresses recognized or valued their help's hardships. Some contend the heat ranking was just sensible. Fuel ran pricey, so it paid to focus on family-frequented areas. Others point to a grimmer rationale, seeing staff as inherently tougher, their requirements basic, their ease unimportant. Reality probably differed across homes. Certain bosses supplied additional covers, hot beverages, or even little fires in staff areas amid brutal freezes. In other places, they overlooked it entirely, blind and silent to the frost-bitten digits and hacking coughs afflicting the workforce every season. You occupy a midway position in this order. As housemaid, you enter the family's areas, passing your shifts amid comfort you can't truly have. You kindle their blazes and sense their glow. You smooth their linens and handle their toasty fabrics. You haul their fuel and inhale their smoky atmosphere. The coziness flows over you like sunlight on a window, there yet not yours, experienced but unclaimed. Evenings bring you to your garret and trembling under meager bedding. Yet by daylight you dwell in loaned ease. That's better than what the scullery maid endures. It's not as good as for the cook, who lingers by the stove endlessly, soaking up its radiance like a cloth. An odd account from an ex-lady's maid captures the odd closeness of preheating another's garments. She'd grasp her employer's chemise near the flames, rotating it to warm the material uniformly, then bear it to the boudoir where the lady lingered. The heat shifted from textile to body in a flash. The woman would exhale in delight as the maid's hand stayed numb. It resembled, she noted, surrendering a treasure, like nourishing another from a meal denied to yourself. Do you know that sensation? You've gripped warming pans to linens you'll never rest upon, fed logs to hearths you'll never lounge near, lugged steaming pitchers for soaks you'll never savor. The heat is forever meant for others. Your role involves generating it, ferrying it, sustaining it, never relishing it. The ranking stands firm, implicit, unyielding. Warm air ascends, as does rank. You stay low in the frosty zones, handling tasks that enable luxury. Still, there are quiet acts of defiance, chances seized unseen. You pause extra moments near the morning room blaze, letting the glow seep into your hands. You lean against the heated chimney wall in the hallway, drawing in what warmth penetrates your gown. You cradle a steaming ewer in your palms prior to serving it, sensing the heat diffuse through your skin like a hidden gift. Such minor pilferings keep you going. They're your way of persisting. The green baize door shuts after you, ushering back the chill. You're in your realm again, where the breeze nips the boards creak underfoot and the flames are faint or missing, yet you bear away a trace, a recollection of heat. A faint warmth clings to your skin for the moment. It won't last much longer. It's never meant to. Yet right now, that brief comfort suffices. The daylight of morning has grown a bit brighter, though still weak and watery, seeping through the panes like diluted cream. As you move down the corridor, you glimpse yourself in a mirror, a spectral figure draped in muted grays and whites. Your gown is simple, your apron crisply ironed, your cap secured firmly over your locks. You resemble countless other maids in households throughout England, standardized, unseen, easily replaced. Yet under that outward sameness lies the true shield you don, the hidden strata that sustain you. In this era, attire isn't about adornment. It's essential for enduring. You prepared in the pre-dawn gloom this morning, just as always, your hands navigating cloth by feel in the blackness. First, the chemise. That worn, thin cotton softened through countless launderings, meant to buffer your flesh from coarser outer pieces. Then the drawers, baggy and extending well below your knees, pairing with the woolen stockings you tugged up afterward, dense and prickly, mended at the toes and heels where they've frayed. Above them went another set, finer and more aged, yet effective at trapping some heat near your lower legs. Wearing 2 layers of stockings isn't indulgence, it's vital. A single pair stands no chance against the icy drafts climbing from these flagstones. Then the petticoats, not just one but several. Come summertime, a lone one might do, but winter demands 3 or even 4, each adding bulk and insulation until your lower body seems swathed in mist. The topmost is made of flannel, that revered material the Victorians revere almost as a guardian spirit. Flannel retains body heat. It wards off moisture. Flannel, proclaim the domestic guides, thwarts ailments from tuberculosis to lapses in virtue. You're skeptical on the virtue front, but no one can deny how often its coziness has rescued you during nights when all else failed. Historians delight in noting the staggering array of underclothes a Victorian woman might layer on. Research into preserved garments suggests a laboring class woman in the cold season could bear as much as 14 pounds of material before slipping on her main dress. That sheer mass is draining. Fabric bearing down from all sides, hampering motion, requiring constant exertion just to walk. Still, the trade-off is preferable. Far better than the penetrating chill that invades your bones and lingers in your limbs. Bring in chilblains, frost nip, and an unrelenting freeze no blaze can banish. You'll gladly shoulder the burden. Atop it all goes your dress, sturdy wool in a sensible gray that conceals grime, soot, and spills. It fastens down the front, a rare convenience letting you manage alone, and reaches your ankles, shrouding the bastion of layers underneath. The cuffs extend fully, the neckline rises high, the weave dense enough to blunt an edge, or at least to blunt the gusts slicing through every gap in this aging manner. You've heard tales of high society women in their flowing silks and satins, light as a breeze. The notion baffles you. How could anyone prioritize elegance over insulation? But then, those elegant ladies enjoy hearths blazing in every chamber, with staff to stoke them. They have the luxury of feeling the chill. You do not. The last piece is your shawl, crocheted from wool by your mother long ago. The pattern's irregular but secure. You drape it over your shoulders whenever possible, stowing it under your apron when required, and grieve its lack on days the head housekeeper deems it too casual. A true maid, she insists, doesn't swaddle herself like common folk. A true maid upholds decorum. Over time, you've stopped contesting it. You've adapted to bearing the frost, keeping the shawl concealed in your pocket for swift retrieval in solitude. These quiet acts of defiance, these modest sources of heat, they're the true measure of getting by. Scholars still argue over how much leeway servants enjoyed in selecting their garb. Certain estates supplied complete outfits, specifying everything from chemise to headpiece. In others, workers furnished their own intimates, with oversight limited to outerwear that didn't meet expectations. Undeniably, though, the demands of propriety clashed with the need for warmth. A maid layered for the cold might seem frumpy, disheveled, lacking polish. A maid attired correctly risked numbness. When choices arose, they typically prioritized looks over ease. Enduring visible shivers was fine. Betraying poverty was forbidden. You occasionally ponder the male staff here, the footman, the butler, the stable hand with the horses. Their outfits differ markedly, custom sewn and sleek, crafted to showcase the estate's affluence. They don livery in the family's hues, accented by gleaming brass and buffed footwear, their breeches leaving legs exposed and offering scant defense from the wintry air. You've watched the footmen tremble in the passages, their thighs uncovered below the knee-length breeches, those flimsy stockings useless against the gales rushing over the polished stone. The footmen endure their discomfort in ways distinct from yours, their outfits selected for show over practicality, their physical well-being offered up to the household sense of grandeur. An entry in one footman's journal captures the torment of remaining rigid during those frosty evening meals. His lower legs gone numb from the knees downward, his fingers shaking as he ladled out the broth. He noted how he'd wiggle his toes within his footwear, a subtle action hidden from the family's gaze, yet sufficient to circulate the blood. He'd grit his teeth to silence the clatter. He'd mastered the art of persisting because persistence defined his role. The chill was just one more task on his list. You've picked up comparable techniques yourself. Keeping your fingers active even on idle moments, the activity sparking the vital warmth your frame craves. Hugging your elbows to your torso when motionless, capturing heat in that narrow gap. Drawing breath steadily via your nostrils, heating the air prior to it hitting your chest. These are lessons no instructor imparts. They come from trial and error, from missteps, from evenings of quaking and dawns of stiffness. Your form acts as its own hearth, provided you grasp how to feed the flames. The hall clock tolls, reminding you that you've lingered in place overly long. Duties await. They always do, and musing over attire here won't accomplish them. You straighten your headpiece, secure your wrap under your bib, and head for the staircase. The garments move along with you. Material whispering over material. Heat preserved right against your flesh. You're bundled in woolens, flannels, and cottons. 14 pounds of protection versus a foe that knows no rest. It's insufficient. It never fully suffices, yet it's your portion, and you've come to appreciate it. Beyond the pains, the gale intensifies, shaking the glass in its casings. Elsewhere within the estate, a portal bangs shut. The frost is challenging the barriers, seeking vulnerabilities, hunting entry points. But you're in motion now, tending to tasks, producing the energy that sustains you through yet another shift. Your garb binds you intact. Your wrappings sustain your life. And underneath everything, your epidermis recalls the sunlit season, recalls comfort, recalls the sensation of basking in daylight sans tremors. That recollection serves as its own shield, and you bear it along, concealed and treasured, anticipating the cycle's shift. The steps groan under your steps as you ascend to the upper quarters. A china ewer steadied in your grasp, its contents still hot. You drew it from the stove in the scullery mere minutes prior, though you sensed the temperature waning via the clay, draining off into the icy atmosphere. Upon arriving at the lady's suite, it'll be tepid at most. When she employs it, it might scarcely exceed the frost layering the ledges. This is your daily contest. Temperature versus span, fervor versus the clock, and in the depths of winter, defeat comes routinely. Folks of the Victorian era lacked modern lavatories. Instead, they had sleeping areas with vanity tables, antechambers with ewers, and a complex array of vessels, pans, and slop jars demanding perpetual care from staff such as yourself. Each measure of liquid for cleansing had to be transported upward, each measure for disposal hauled back below. Certain residences boasted piping of sorts true, but it was basic, fickle, and prone to icing over from late fall through early spring. You've ceased relying on those conduits. You've come to rely on your pair of capable palms. The vanity in the lady's space is an exquisite fixture. Rosewood with a stone slab atop, a china bowl cradled at its heart like a fledgling in its cradle. Next to it rests the container you're set to refresh. The previous day's liquid now chilled and stagnant, a fragile frost film gathering on top. You place the new vessel and hoist the prior one, sensing the bite seep through the china. This liquid gets discarded, squandered, since nobody bothered with it ere it solidified. The morrow will mirror it, and the one beyond. The cold months breed extravagance. Labor cycled perpetually against an adversary of unyielding stamina. A quirky fact that scholars often highlight is the era's fixation on icy ablutions. Numerous guides for domestic life urged cleansing the visage and palms with chilled liquid, deeming it a booster for vitality and robustness. They cautioned that heated liquid enfeebled the frame and fostered indolence. You reckon those guides sprang from pens of folks who'd never shattered frost from a dish on a midwinter dawn. You reckon they'd never endured the jolt of gelid liquid on drowsy flesh, the involuntary inhale you stifle too late, the throb that embeds in your digits and lingers through the hours. Icy ablutions aren't energizing, they're torment. Yet the household adheres to the guide's counsel. Thus you haul heated water that the family rejects for themselves, while scrubbing your face with icy liquid that stings like fire. The chamber pot proves even more dreadful. You attempt to push the notion aside, yet it intrudes relentlessly, just like the obligation. Each bedroom hides one slipped under the bed, or concealed in a modest piece of furniture known as a commode. Each dawn demands that you clear them out. You transport the foul contents along the rear staircase to the outhouse or the sewer pit, averting your gaze, tensing your gut against the stench. During warmer months, it's simply disagreeable. Come winter, it edges toward outright agony. Traversing from the sleeping quarters to the privy drags you through the draftiest corners of the manor, along those back steps, across the scullery, past the rear exit, and into the open yard where gusts lurk like predators. Your grip on the pot's handle loses sensation almost immediately. Each stride over the iced earth sends pain shooting through your soles. As for the pot's load, you've trained yourself to ignore its sight, its implications, the very cargo in your hold. You just hasten onward, desperate to complete the chore before the chill overtakes you. Scholars still debate the frequency of emptying these vessels in grand homes. Certain accounts claim a once-a-day routine was the norm, whereas others posit that overworked staff often delayed it, particularly when harsh weather turned outside excursions intolerable. Undeniably, such drudgery landed on the most junior help, housemaids, kitchen girls, anyone ranked at the hierarchy's base. The household never dwelled on it. They relieved themselves and moved on, assuming some unseen hand would erase the traces. That hand belonged to you every time. One servant's journal entry recounts the brutal freeze of 1879 when the contents solidified solid before she could dispose of them. She described chipping away the frost with a rod, laboring in the yard as tears froze on her cheeks, her digits too frozen to register the tool's weight. The scene borders on the ridiculous. A girl assaulting a iced-over pot like a convict at hard labor. Yet, there's no amusement in the tale, merely bone-deep weariness and the stark truth of duties that press on no matter the hardship. The outhouse provides scant relief. It's a rough-hewn shed at the yard's far end, distant enough from the building to trap the odors, yet near sufficient for staff to access it sans fatal chill. Within, shadows and frost dominate, the air thick with rot. The bench, polished by endless use, bears faint etchings on its panels. You avoid scrutinizing them. You handle your needs with haste and bolt back indoors, jaws clacking, flesh crawling from the bite of air. Naturally, the family seldom ventures there. Their pots suffice for nighttime, and by day, they enjoy the water closet, a compact chamber boasting a true flushing lavatory, such an extravagance that guests occasionally request a peek. Winter brings its own woes to the water closet, frozen lines, stuck valves, the basin's water crystallizing without constant warmth. But when operational, it performs flawlessly. The family employs it casually, oblivious to the underlings battling blizzards and gales for the distant latrine. Whispers circulate of estates where the help gets a private water closet tucked in the cellar or servant's passage, a modest nod to decency and sanitation. This residence offers no such grace. Here, rank governs even private needs. The master's refuse vanishes through discreet servant toil, as if it never happened. The staff's own remains their burden alone, dealt with in frigid outhouses and communal pots, unspoken and unseen. The photograph you're clutching has chilled through. You've lingered in place overly, adrift in reflections best avoided. The lady of the house will stir shortly, anticipating hot water by her bedside, steaming water, liquid that defies the frost. You rush back to the staircase, steps swift and soft. Your thoughts already leap to the duties awaiting, pots to void, pitchers to replenish. Endless trips ferrying liquid upward, downward, and up once more. The labor persists without cease. The frost yields no quarter. Then, from somewhere within the walls, a bell chimes, piercing, insistent, impossible to disregard. A call for service. There's always a demand. You draw in air, steady the frame in your grasp, and head toward the peal. The ringing ceases, though its resonance haunts your hearing as you head down to the kitchen. Your belly knots, less from the bell than from a baser urge. Starvation. The gruel from first light has vanished hours ago, its fleeting heat now a faint echo. Its bulk consumed by relentless toil. Your frame craves sustenance. In this season, sustenance means more than calories. It's warmth, endurance. Each morsel you take ignites the inner blaze, propelling you against the freeze. When you step into the servants' hall, silence greets you. The lengthy oak table stands bare, save for scattered remnants of the morning meal. This space feels less biting than the rest of the house, thanks to its adjacency to the kitchen, where the stove's heat filters through the walls like a quiet gift. You drop onto a seat and shut your eyes briefly, allowing the mild comfort to envelop you. Your feet pulse with pain, your hands throb, yet the gnawing in your gut demands attention above all. That's the pull that drew you here, Cook materializes in the entrance, drying her hands on her apron. Her gaze meets yours with no hint of astonishment. She's witnessed countless staff collapse onto this very bench, faces etched with the same weary void. She vanishes without a sound, only to reappear bearing a dish of dense, earthy concoction, perhaps broth, perhaps ragout, or merely scraps from the prior day's fare, reborn through slow cooking. The label hardly signifies. What counts is its steam. You clasp the vessel, sensing the heat radiate from your fingers, along your arms, piercing the icy depths within your torso. That initial taste scorches your mouth, but the discomfort fades against the vital glow. Historians often highlight an intriguing aspect: the immense energy expenditure of Victorian household labor. Maids expended vast calories scaling ladders, lugging fuel, scouring surfaces, fetching liquids, and their frames needed sustenance to keep pace. Calculations indicate a housemaid could consume over 3,000 calories daily in the winter months, especially when stoking the home's hearths compounded her chores. Provisions for the help aim to sustain this output, favoring volume over refinement. Stuff the stomach, power the limbs, sustain the toil. The mixture clings heavily with grains and shreds of lamb, its grease shimmering atop like scattered jewels. You consume it deliberately, relishing every portion, as the inner fire cascades through your frame. This is the true solace you've come to know, not the blazes you kindle for the gentry, nor the bed warmers you tote to chambers forever beyond your rest. This inner blaze arises from within, sparked by digestion turning victuals to vigor. The era's folk grasped this on a gut level, sans the modern knowledge to articulate it. A nourished worker stays toasty, a starved one spells trouble. Next arrives tea, robust and dark, laced with a single cube of sweetness that cook feigns ignorance of. Brew is the essence of this domain, quaffed in volumes that would shock today's physicians. Whispers suggest certain estates permit aides 6 or 7 mugs daily. With the urn perpetually simmering and the pot seldom drained, the stimulant revives wits fogged by fatigue. Yet it's the thermal embrace that reigns supreme, each draught a compact blaze kindling your core, repelling the chill lurking in every passage. Scholars still argue over the caliber of rations doled out to Victorian underlings. Certain estates nourished their retinue generously, convinced superior fare yielded superior service. Others pinched pennies ruthlessly, offering watery slop and day-old loaves, while the household savored joints and sweets. Ledgers from those times reveal stark disparities, some tallying ample shares of flesh, dairy, and ale, others barely noting crusts and fats. The staff seldom voiced gripes openly. Protest invited the sack, and the sack ushered in the poorhouse, wiser to accept the fare and hoard cravings for slumber. One odd entry from a valet's recollections outlines the pecking order of meals even within the servants' quarters. Senior figures: the valet, the steward. The gentlewoman's attendant dined apart in a modest nook dubbed the bailiff's lounge, with superior dishes and fuller plates. Junior hands gathered in the grand hall, divvying up remnants from the elite's spread. Cooks preferred might snag bonus scoops, whereas the fallen from grace discovered their servings oddly scant. Sustenance, much like heat, traced the contours of authority. Amid the downtrodden, inequality still thrived. You drain the last of the broth and nestle the teacup in your grasp, inhaling the rising vapor. The glow has crept to your extremities now. easing the rigidity born of toting frosty loads across frigid spaces. Your belly quiets at last. Your thoughts, honed by the sweet jolt and bruise edge, turn to the duties looming post-noon. Linens to arrange, hearths to feed, cutlery to buff prior to the evening repast. The labor looms endless as a horizonless path, yet fuel now courses through you to tread it. Cook bustles in the scullery at your back, tending cauldrons and peering into hearths, her steadiness rivaling the stove's own. Rumors say she sneaks a swallow of spirits on the frostiest dawns, a flask tucked in her smock. Its fire bolsters her when flames fall short. You've held your tongue on the matter. You've offered no censure. Each soul carves their path through the season's grip. Others bundle up in additional layers of undergarments. Others snatch quick respites near the hearth. Others sip gin from concealed flasks and act as if the frost can't reach them. You've sampled gin a time or two yourself. The footman passed you his flask during a night when the chill was so intense the panes shattered, and you swallowed a mouthful that scorched like molten flame all the way down. For an instant, you sensed yourself unbreakable, cozy and relaxed, nearly content. Then the glow ebbed away. The freeze came back fiercer than ever, and you grasped why the servant guides warned against liquor. Booze deceives. It tricks you into warmth even as it draws the heat from deep within, rendering you icier than at the outset. Yet on evenings when reality weighs too heavily, a deception can seem like kindness. The wall clock ticks relentlessly, counting down the moments before you have to resume your duties. You finish the dregs of your tea and rise, sensing the comfort seep into your limbs like a vow. Beyond this space, the frost lurks in the hallways, the sleeping quarters, every nook of this dwelling, untouched by the flames. But now you're prepared for it. Nourished, heated, and strengthened, you can confront whatever lies ahead. As you go by the cook, you give her a nod, a quiet gesture of gratitude for the broth, the brew, and the short pause. She returns it without halting her tasks, her fingers already working the dough for the next day's loaves. The kitchen's coziness trails you to the threshold, then lets you go into the icy expanse. The chill seizes you right away, coiling around your legs, brushing your skin. But within, the soup continues to smolder like a coal. Within, the tea still pulses with fervor. You bear your sustenance along, unseen, yet essential. And with each stride, you head back to the chores that await. The rear entrance creaks as you force it ajar, and the frost strikes you like a barrier. Not the gradual indoor chill you're used to, but a keener, untamed sort. A cold that shifts and nips and robs your air before you can draw breath. Overhead, the sky looms ashen and low, burdened with clouds foretelling snowfall. The earth underfoot is rock hard with ice, dirt hardened to steel, pools frozen into slippery panes of danger. And in the distance, spanning the courtyard, looms the wash house, a modest stone structure with vapor curling from its panes like the exhalation of a dormant creature. Here, the linens get cleaned. Here, winter reveals its harshest side. You hurry across the courtyard, hugging yourself tight, soles skidding over the iced surface. The gust slices through your gown as if it's nothing, seeking out every opening, every stitch, every spot where the cloth doesn't seal. When you finally make it to the wash house entrance, your face has gone deadened and your digits throb with pain. You shove your way in and let the vapor surround you, humid, dense, laden with the scent of soap and lye. For a second, it seems like deliverance. Then your eyes fall on the tasks ahead, and deliverance starts to resemble a bitter prank. The laundry women are present already, their cuffs pushed up to the forearms, their limbs immersed in massive copper vats of water. The liquid starts off scalding, warmed by blazes roaring under the containers, but it cools swiftly. As the women scour and wring and scour once more, the heat diminishes bit by bit until the initial boil turns tepid, then chilly, then frigid. Come afternoon, they'll toil in water that deadens the fingers and reddens the flesh in irritation. By dusk, exhaustion will numb them completely. One fascinating fact that scholars often highlight is the immense quantity of washing generated in a Victorian home. Bed linens, bath cloths, spreads, doilies, blouses, chemises, underskirts, hose. The roster goes on forever, and each piece demands manual cleansing. In a grand estate, the wash might occupy 3 or 4 dedicated women all day long, their routine swallowed by the perpetual round of laundering, wringing, airing, and pressing. In humbler homes, it burdened the everyday staff, piling onto their already crushing roster of jobs. Regardless, the toil was grueling, the shifts endless, and the physical strain immense. You observe a laundry maid hoist a bedsheet from the tub, her limbs quivering under the load. Soaked cloth weighs a fortune, and she sways a bit while hauling it to the wringer, a hefty wooden device with cylinders that press out the moisture. The wringer calls for real power to turn, its lever stubborn, its mechanisms rumbling at every rotation. You've operated it on occasions when the usual hands were ill or swamped, and you recall the soreness that embedded in your upper back and lingered for days. The wringer gets the job done, but it exacts a toll in brawn and perspiration. Scholars still disagree on the frequency of laundry in Victorian homes. Certain experts claim it occurred weekly, with set days for particular chores. Washing on Mondays, airing on Tuesdays, pressing on Wednesdays. Certain experts propose that in grand estates like this one, the washing never truly paused, with the female staff toiling daily just to meet the unrelenting needs. One undeniable truth stands out. The season's chill amplified every hardship. Buckets of water turned to ice in the basins. Bed linens left out to air became as rigid as planks. And the women enduring this labor bore the cost in their very flesh, their palms fissured and oozing, their knuckles puffy from the perpetual moisture. Yet the true agony lay not in the liquid itself, but in the shifts, the endless shifts from scalding to icy, from soaked to parched, from sheltered indoors to the biting outdoors. A washerwoman would immerse her arms in boiling suds, only to venture into the frosty outdoors to pin up the linens. That jolt was brutal. The stark difference felt like an assault. Frostbite blisters erupted on fingertips and feet, those throbbing lumps born from blood sluggish in the freeze. You've witnessed servants with palms so bloated they struggle to clutch a scrubbing board. Their flesh tore open at the joints, crimson staining the frothy rinse. Still, they pressed on. They had no alternative. An entry from one such worker's journal captures her frigid regimen in stark detail. She woke at 5 to kindle the flames under the boiler vats. By 6, she was scrubbing. At midday, her skin was chafed bare. Come dusk, sensation fled her digits, forcing her to glance down to confirm she still grasped the cloth. She confessed to longing for warmer months, like a vision of the afterlife. A far-off idyll of balmy breezes, unfreezing streams, and linens that aired out in mere hours rather than endless days. The frost, she noted, planted seeds of doubt that balmier times had ever truly come. Airing the wash brought its separate torment. During milder seasons, cloths swayed on outdoor ropes, catching the wind and ready in no time. But in this bleak time, the grounds offered nothing. Materials hardened instantly upon exposure. What ought to be pliant cotton stiffened like timber. The fix involved hanging it all within walls, stretching coverings across wooden frames by the hearth, threading the staff passages with sodden material that saturated the atmosphere with humidity. The manor transformed into a labyrinth of suspended fabrics, and the clammy air invaded every corner. Your garments hung perpetually half wet. Your covers stayed forever tepid. The sogginess trailed you everywhere, an insistent shadow that the season wouldn't let go. You pitch in as able, hauling tubs of drenched wash from the outbuilding to the airing stands, your limbs throbbing under the load. The tub digs into your torso, seeping through your smock and numbing your flesh despite the motion. Every journey turns into a minor skirmish against the frost, trudging over the iced grounds, then retreating to the faint heat indoors. After the third haul, your grip falters. After the fifth, numbness claims your extremities completely, yet the duties roll onward. The wash pays no heed to your ease. It looms, perpetual and insistent, until all coverings gleam spotless and all garments lie smooth. Pressing the cloth grants a sliver of respite, if fate assigns you there. The flat irons warm upon the range, their heated faces sending soothing rays into your palms as you smooth the creases. For those fleeting spells, you linger by the blaze, easing folds from the weave, enveloped in coziness rather than the freeze. It's monotonous labor, gliding to and fro, the tool cooling swiftly and requiring fresh heat often. But monotony pales against the gift of thaw, and you've come to treasure these intervals, tucking them away like treasures in a pouch. The washer closest to you glances over, her cheeks rosy from the vapor, stray locks clinging damply under her headwear. Her gaze locks with yours, and she shares a weary grin, the bond of mutual endurance, the nod that you're both ensnared in this unyielding grind. You return it, and briefly, the chill seems marginally kinder. Then a gust shakes the panes, a stark cue that the season lurks, ever lurking. You collect your vacant tub and turn toward the manor, abandoning the mist and lather and ceaseless soggy toil. Your palms glow crimson and scraped. Your gown clings moistly, yet deep within, a faint ember glows. From the broth's lingering heat, the teas echo, the resilient fire of a frame that won't yield. The grounds unfold ahead, iced and somber. You traverse them once again, and the building engulfs you. The hacking trails you along the hall. It began 3 days back with the kitchen helper, a harsh, scraping noise that reverberated through the scullery like a fracture. Now it's creeping wider. You catch it in the staff quarters, the upper chambers, the hushed breaks between chores when workers halt for air. The frost has infiltrated, not merely the structure, but the forms that power it. The winter's foe at the threshold has stormed the defenses. You recognize the markers well, the unnatural color blooming on faces meant to stay ashen, the unnatural spark in gazes dulled by fatigue, the faint quiver in fingers trained for firmness. Illness spreads through these halls like whispered gossip, leaping from one body to the next with no way to halt it. Physicians blame the foul vapors, the miasma seeping up from soggy basements and iced-over roads. The staff whispers, "It's the chill itself," sneaking into chests and lingering like an intruder who won't leave. You can't say which view holds truth. All you grasp is that folks are falling ill, and in this season, ailment can prove fatal. The scullery maid fares the poorest. You spotted her earlier, curled up by the kitchen stove, her complexion ashen, breaths coming in quick, feeble bursts. The cook forced some steaming broth down her and ordered her back to duties. There's no spare help to step in, no funds for additional workers, no allowance in the estate's ledgers for such setbacks. She scoured the cookware till midday, then crumpled near the fireplace, drained beyond rising. They hauled her to her quarters below stairs, a slim pallet in a chamber starved of daylight. You ponder if she'll stir come morning. You ponder if she'll endure it all. Historians often highlight the striking frequency of lung ailments among Victorian domestics. Consumption, known today as tuberculosis, raged unchecked, fueled by cramped spaces and stuffy air. Pneumonia trailed right after, striking those whose breaths had been eroded by frost and moisture. Research into era death registries revealed that household staff succumbed to respiratory woes at almost double the pace of ordinary folk. The figures are cold and precise, yet each masks a life. Someone who kindled flames, hauled buckets, and bedded down in lofts where ice patterns etched the plaster. You've dodged the worst thus far. Your cough stays light, a nagging scratch deep in your throat that ebbs and flows. You've mastered hiding it, choking it back, shielding it from the head housekeeper's sharp gaze. A hacking worker spells trouble. A hacking worker risks infecting the masters. A hacking worker faces the boot, references withheld, cast into the freeze to chase jobs that vanish like smoke. Thus you gulp it away, stifle it, and feign wellness. And you pray that the shadow in your lungs fades before it swells into peril. The staff quarters now serve as a rough sick room. Those unfit for labor yet not ill enough for expulsion huddle there, swaddled in covers. Nursing cups of tea thin to near clear. The blaze sputters. Coal gets doled out sparingly, even amid sickness, and the atmosphere hangs heavy with camphor and eucalyptus scents, cures that vow relief but seldom fulfill it. You join them whenever possible, dispensing scant solace, a clasp of the hand, a palm to the brow, a murmured tale to fill the hours. Scholars still argue over how Victorian homes manage staff sickness. Certain bosses showed kindness, supplying doctors and rest. Others proved heartless, ousting the unwell on the spot and scouting fresh hires by week's end. The workers' side seldom lingers in archives. Their journals, if any, dwelled on toil, not frailty. Yet scraps endure. A note on a comrade's feverish end, a recollection of dread at illness striking distant from kin. These echoes, soft but stubborn, underscore that endurance was no sure thing. Frostnip lurks as a stealthier foe, subtle in its malice. You've witnessed its toll on digits, flesh paling to white, then bruising blue, then charring black in dire instances. The washwomen bear the brunt, their palms forever soaked, forever numb, circulation fleeing tips like troops pulling back. One lass forfeited 2 fingertips the prior winter, tissue withering past all the cook's folk cures. She toils in the scullery these days, her scarred grip tucked in her skirts, prospects shrunk to the scant chores she manages. No one broaches the topic. To voice it would admit how near you all teeter to matching ruin. An odd entry in a Victorian health periodical recounts frostnip remedies with eerie optimism. The injured part ought to thaw slowly, the physician notes, via lukewarm baths and soft rubbing. Never use direct warmth, lest it worsen the harm. The guidance rings true, but presumes comforts domestics scarce commanded. Lukewarm liquid demanded fire to warm. Soft rubbing demanded leisure to tend. In truth, chilled staff bound their limbs in scraps and pressed on, trusting nature to mend the rot. At times it spared them, at times it claimed more. You inspect your palms presently, flipping them in the faint glow. The hide is chafed and raw, split at the joints from winter's bite, but the hue persists. Rosy under the wear, pulse holding steady, you curl your digits and sense the usual throb. The rigidity that clings from late fall through early spring. It stings, but it functions. For the moment, that suffices. The help tends to one another's wounds, for none beyond will bother. Mrs. Plummer whips up cures for bruises using old family formulas. She applies mustard poultices to chests, brews onion mixtures to ease coughs, and wraps heated bricks in wool to soothe sore limbs. The head servant pretends not to notice the additional bedding that sneaks onto ill cots, or the surplus fuel that somehow ends up in the lower-level fires. Such kindnesses break the regulations on paper, yet those regulations came from folks who never faced the choice between following orders and staying alive. Do you recall the young woman who passed away during the previous cold season? Mary was her name, another maid just like yourself. She was youthful, reserved, and perpetually chilled. The illness claimed her swiftly, in 3 days' time, starting with a fierce blaze on Monday, turning to wild feverishness by midweek, and vanishing come Friday dawn. They laid her to rest in the local church graveyard, with a modest service joined only by staff who could steal away for an hour. The household owners dispatched a bouquet, but skipped the event entirely. What reason would they have to go? To them, she was merely help to swappable, erasable. But you can't erase her from your thoughts. Her features, her tone, the way she'd chuckle at Mrs. Plummer's quips, they linger. You know she truly existed. That hacking sound rings out once more from further along the hall. Rising to your feet, you head in its direction, holding a mug of tea that's reached a safe sipping warmth. The unwell crave heat, and heat is the one thing you can provide. It's scant, far short of ideal, yet it's real. The frost will eventually yield. It invariably does, and the ones who endure will bear the recollections of the lost, a burden that stays heavy, a chill that lingers on. You ease the door ajar and enter the room, prepared to share whatever solace is in your power. The staircase plunges into gloom. With every tread, you sink lower, away from the weak daylight seeping in from the upper panes, nearer to the core of the dwelling's endless appetite. The atmosphere turns icier the deeper you venture, not the crisp bite of the outside world, but a moister sort, thicker, one that sticks to your flesh and burrows into your breath. The odor hits you first before your eyes adjust. Particles of soil and dirt mingled with a sharp, iron-like tang, the aroma of rock and ages past, and the dark fuel that sustains this home. You've arrived at the coal storage below, the stockpile, the chamber safeguarding the essence of enduring the season. The entrance is sturdy and twisted from long exposure to moisture, creaking in protest as you force it wide. Inside stretches a dim hollow, pierced solely by the subtle shine of the fuel mound stacked against the opposite side. The mass climbs almost to the roofline, a peak of ebony chunks embodying days of heat, seasons of endurance. You've witnessed this space brimming and on the brink of barren, and you're clear on which view chills you deepest. Plenty here spells safety. Depletion forces tough calls. Which areas get warmed? Which lie abandoned to the freeze? Which workers take the fall for the lack? In a Victorian chill, fuel is vital. It powers the stove for meals. It stokes the hearths for the residents' comfort. It warms the bathwater, the smoothing tools, the pans that blunt the worst room's edge. Lacking it, the estate would falter in mere days, its people huddled and trembling amid shadows, echoing their forebears from darker eras. The owners grasp this vaguely. They foot the fuel costs, sure, but they avoid the depths. They skip these steps. They don't inhale the grit or shoulder the toll of their ease. One fact that scholars often highlight is the sheer volume of fuel used in affluent Victorian homes. A grand property could devour multiple tons monthly in the cold months, the dark mineral vanishing into blazes at a pace that borders on the unbelievable. Shipments came via wagon, the haulers slinging bags down chutes into the holds, their skins smeared with grime, their spines curved from the strain. The load they brought would then travel upward, load by load, shovelful by shovelful, borne by staff whose palms stayed stained a perpetual slate from the toil. The path from hold to hearth, counted in strides in perspiration, repeated scores of times daily. You unhook a pail and draw near the stack. The pieces slide under your tool, fragments rolling and steadying with a rumble like far-off storm. Every fragment weighs substantial in your grip, compact, unyielding. Packed with the buried fire from eons ago, you load the container with care, picking fragments of proper dimensions, steering clear of the powder and fines that flare up too quickly without value. This comes from endless practice. Your fingers sense automatically which bits will ignite steadily and last, which will shatter into worthless cinders. The residents see all fuel as identical. Your experience tells a different tale. Scholars still argue over the tightness of fuel limits in such Victorian setups. Certain experts claim that affluent groups used it without restraint, their storerooms forever refilled, their help ordered to maintain roaring blazes no matter the expense. Counterviews cite ledgers that log each fragment, each load, each tray hauled above. The reality probably varied based on the family's fortune and the head servant's disposition. Here in this home, every bit of coal gets tallied. The housekeeper maintains a detailed record, logging the portions allocated to each space, the weekly consumption, and the shrinking stock in the cellar's heap. Extravagance isn't allowed. Pilfering brings harsh penalties. Still, it occurs. You're aware of that, even if you've managed to avoid detection. A single chunk tucked into a pocket, or a handful more tossed into a worker's scuttle when eyes are elsewhere. Winter's bite turns upright folks into pilferers, and the boundary between borrowing and thieving fades when your hands ache from the frost and your quarters feel like ice. The housekeeper harbors doubts naturally. She's always on guard, but confirming it proves trickier than just wondering, and at times she turns a blind eye. Maybe echoes of her days as a maid linger in her mind. Maybe she grasps how desperation from the chill can push someone to extremes. An odd entry in a butler's diary outlines the intricate safeguards certain estates employed against coal swindling. Cellars secured with locks gripped solely by top staff. Scuttles measured by weight prior to and following loading, with quantities jotted in accounts. Offenders nabbed for theft got sacked on the spot. No character references provided, a penalty that spelled poverty, hunger, even demise. Such tactics appear severe, bordering on brutality. Yet coal came at a steep price. A full ton of quality stuff exceeded a maid's monthly wages. For the household, swiping it wasn't mere deceit. It struck right at their ease, their riches, their entire existence. Your scuttle brims now, its heft tugging at your hold. The load bears down on your back as you ascend once more into the glow. The steps feel more arduous returning. Every rise fights both pull and weariness. Midway up, you halt, swapping the vessel from arm to arm, sensing the burn in your limbs. This haul is just one among many. You'll endure this day, the next, and onward until thaw breaks through. The fuel streams up from depths to hearths, a ceaseless current of dark stone, turned to blaze and cinders. You step into the hallway and squint at the faint illumination. The atmosphere grows milder here, warmed by the blazes you've kindled earlier. Your frame eases a touch as the underground's frost loosens. The scuttle sways beside you as you proceed, fine grit sprinkling your skirt, your skin, the path below. You'll tidy it soon enough. This streak of ebony flecks tracing your route across the estate. Right now, you press on, ferrying solace from the shadows underneath to the chambers awaiting overhead. The residents won't witness this trek. They'll only behold the blaze, lively and vivid, leaping in its grate as if conjured from thin air. They'll extend palms to the glow and sense its caress on their cheeks, without a thought for the depths. The vessel, the laborer scaling steps with sore muscles. Once extracted from below, the coal vanishes from their view. It shifts to radiance, ease, the expected order of a properly managed dwelling. But you're privy to the reality. You bear it in your grasp, sense it in your frame, detect it in the grit on your lips. Comfort demands payment, rendered through toil, perspiration, and the gradual toll on one's form. The fuel isn't gratis. It's purchased with the household's funds and hauled by the vigor workers expend. Each flame signifies a deal, a swap of power from one form to the next. You arrive at the morning parlor and crouch at the grate, feeding lumps to the blaze with expert motions. The embers snap and expand, their heat extending like a welcome. Briefly, you savor it. The blaze on your skin, the gleam in your sight, the fleeting sense of reprieve. Then you stand, hoist the vacant scuttle, and start the extended descent to the cellar anew. The stock awaits. It invariably does. Twilight has dimmed by now, ebbing so subtly that its exit passed unnoticed. Moments ago, panes captured a wan haze. Now they capture night. Onyx surfaces mirroring the taper's flickers inside. The manor eases into twilight patterns. Residents at supper, staff gliding through chores with the muted precision of those long accustomed to the drill. Yet under the familiarity, a change stirs. Daylight wanes, dusk advances, bearing the drawn-out icy stretches when blazes fail to repel the gloom. You've outlasted one more day, now endure one more evening. Nighttime chores meld into a fog of fatigue. You transport steaming water to sleeping quarters, replenish ewers, smooth the covers. You heat the linens using brass vessels packed with embers, gliding them across until fabric retains sufficient glow to soothe the forms soon to rest. You pull drapes to fend off the frost, nudging the glass, heavy fabric draping like shields versus the dark. The spaces you ready form havens of coziness and plushness, crafted for repose, ease, and the erasure of winter's harsh bite. Yet your quarters provide none of that luxury. Such indulgences await another time. For now, you must tend to the embers in the hearths, snuff out the flames of the candles, and inspect every door, securing them firmly. The manor needs safeguarding from the encroaching shadows before you retreat to your modest sanctuary inside its walls. Historians often highlight a fascinating aspect: the intricate evening routines of affluent Victorian households. Settling in for the night might span an hour or longer, orchestrated by several staff members in a meticulous order of chores. The lady's maid would assist her employer in disrobing, combing through her tresses, smoothing on ointments and balms, and arranging a night dress heated near the flames. The valet mirrored these efforts for the gentlemen of the house. The young ones received baths, led in evening devotions, and nestled under heaps of coverings. Every action unfolded like a scripted dance, anticipated and replicated each evening with the devotion of a sacred rite. In contrast, a servant's wind-down is straightforward and swift. No attendant aids your disrobing, no blaze crackles just for you, no heated garment awaits by the fireside. Once your responsibilities conclude, and they always drag into the late hours, you ascend the cramped staircase to the garret, fueled by whatever stamina lingers. Weariness weighs on your frame, your thoughts drifting toward slumber. The taper you carry flickers erratic patterns across the surfaces, while the chill intensifies with every riser. Upon arriving at your space, your exhalations condense in the atmosphere, and a dull throb settles into your fingertips. Your fellow housemaids occupy the room or are on the verge, their complexions ashen under the wavering light, their motions languid from fatigue. Conversation is scarce in these moments. Utterance demands vigor, and vigor is a scarce commodity. You exchange understanding looks, subtle motions, and the quiet kindnesses of communal living instead. One lass steadies the light as another sheds her clothes. Another has prepared the warming vessel, a ceramic flask encased in woolen cloth, its subtle glow permeating the wrapping. You cradle it briefly to your torso, absorbing the soothing heat into your chilled center, then slide it under the covers to greet your form. Scholars still argue over the prevalence of such warming devices for the help. Certain estates supplied them without hesitation, aware that cozy rest led to more productive days. In others, they counted as indulgences for the household alone, withheld from the workforce. Undeniably, though, the staff devised methods to heat their sleeping areas anyway. Bricks warmed and swathed in fabric, rocks retrieved from the embers, or pouches of sand toasted in the cooking flames. Resourcefulness sparked creativity, and creativity ensured endurance. You strip down hastily, your digits clumsy on fasteners, the frost nipping at any bare flesh. The night dress you don is of flannel once more, that cherished material, softened by countless launderings. Its coziness clings reassuringly to your skin. You drape a shawl snugly over your shoulders atop it. A mob cap crowns your head, trapping the heat rather than letting it flee via your locks. The era's inhabitants knew well that heat escaped from the body's outer parts, so they layered defenses wisely. Venturing out uncovered in the season was folly. Enclosing the scalp meant preservation. From a domestic worker's personal account emerges a touching account of her evening devotion. She knelt by her cot, palms together, her breaths forming wisps in the frigid air, murmuring the phrases her parent had instilled in her youth. The invocations expressed basic thanks for the hours behind, optimism for those ahead, and pleas for shelter and mild temperatures until dawn. In her writings, she noted how these moments eased her isolation, diminished her sense of insignificance, and warded off the feeling of neglect in the immense, icy dwelling. She trusted the divine listened, and that trust, at times, sufficed. You slip under the covers and encounter the jolt of icy linens against your limbs. That fleeting pang of discomfort passes as your heat gradually infuses the hollow. The warming bottle nestles at your toes, its comfort ascending like a benediction. The coverings are meager individually, but multiplied 2, 3, 4 stacked upon one another. Their collective heft bears down comfortingly like an affectionate hold. Nearby, a companion eases into her spot, her proximity to you instinctive, the mutual body heat an unspoken essential. The wick is pinched out. Obscurity envelops everything, pierced solely by the soft luminescence of the moon, filtering past the iced panes. You remain motionless, sensing your frame gradually release its strain. Bit by bit, in each fiber and respiration, the chill persists, as it invariably does, yet it recedes somewhat, repelled by the flannel, the wool, and the unassuming wonder of another's nearby vitality. On evenings such as these, drowsiness arrives gradually. Your reflections meander over the day's toils, revisiting episodes, inventorying chores, fretting over the next day. The blaze in the parlor, had you tended it right? The lady's ewer, did you drain it to prevent icing? The kitchen girl's persistent hack. Is the scullery maid's cough harsher this evening than yesterday? Such worries swirl in your mind like flocks of birds, alighting briefly before taking flight again. They never fully dissolve into calm, yet weariness inevitably prevails. It invariably does. Your lids weigh down, your reflections soften, and the line separating alertness from slumber starts to dissolve. The manor's noises recede, the groan of wooden beams as they settle, the murmur of gusts seeping through fissures, the far-off toll of a timepiece counting out intervals you'll forget. You float into obscurity, into respite, into the brief reprieve slumber offers. The mattress feels cozy at last. Your frame has fulfilled its duty, turning the chilly void into a modest haven of ease. The fellow servant next to you inhales steadily, long since lost to dreams. Her nearness offers solace you scarcely acknowledge. Beyond the walls, the season's chill bears down on the structure, steadfast and unending, poised to launch its next barrage at dawn. But dawn lies distant yet. In this moment, nothing else exists. The heat you've nurtured, the repose you've merited, the gloom that demands no effort from you. Your gaze shuts, your breaths deepen, and amid the quiet, slumber at last claims you. The vision alters, and abruptly you're in a different realm. Not the imposing estate with its labyrinthine passages and lofty vaults, but a more modest, unpretentious spot, nearer to the ground. Here the barriers are shorter, the chambers more confined, the atmosphere dense with haze, and the scent of huddled forms. You know this location instinctively, though its familiarity baffles you. It's the sort of dwelling you once inhabited before domestic work pulled you from it. The type where heat is scant, yet genuine, where frost is battled not by legions of staff, but by the basic tools of proximity and flame. This represents the alternate aspect of that era's cold season, the facet invisible to opulent residences. In a simple abode, a bungalow, a row house, a squeezed flat in an urban slum, the frost assumes another guise. No vast stone lobbies require stoking. No multitude of hearths crave fuel. No intricate ceremonies involve warming trays and toasty garments. Just one chamber, maybe two, and a lone fireplace bearing the burden of countless others. The blaze endures nonstop when resources allow. Its glow forms the heart of all activity, the star the family circles. Meals prepare here. Cleansing occurs here. Existing, resting, even passing away transpires here. Everything unfolds within the fire's radiant reach. A fascinating fact that scholars often highlight is poverty's strange thriftiness. A compact space warms more swiftly than an expansive one. Figures clustered together distribute heat that lavish sleeping quarters squander. The destitute, despite their hardships, frequently rested cozier than the help in affluent homes, owing to less area to warm and greater incentive to bunch up. Research on era-specific dwellings revealed that laboring families achieved superior interior climes compared to numerous elite establishments, not via plentiful supplies but via the principles of confined areas. Majestic manors stood as tributes to chill. Unassuming huts blazed as bastions of imperative. Now the recollection of your mother's dwelling surfaces, emerging unexpectedly from the depths. That lone space where your kin resided, its surfaces stained dark from decades of soot, its ground of rammed soil polished by endless steps. The blaze in the nook, sustained by scraps scavenged, coal if funds permitted, timber if not, parched manure in the direst spells when even sticks grew rare. Then you'd curl by that hearth with siblings, a jumble of arms and covers, so entwined you sensed one another's pulses. It felt cramped, it felt destitute, yet it glowed with a coziness the sprawling manor could never match. Scholars still quarrel over the comparative ease across societal ranks during those frosty months. Certain maintain that affluence offered clear perks, superior sustenance, finer attire, remedies from healers amid ailments. Others stress that the bodily heat of want merits recognition, that the elite endured in their vast, breezy abodes, whereas the needy nestled snugly in their petite enclosures. Reality likely weaves a more intricate tapestry. Riches granted possibilities, want enforced imperatives. And at times, those imperatives outshone deliberate selections. The imposing estates boasted expanse, but expanse waged war on warmth. Thermal air ascended to summits 20 feet overhead and dissolved into walls and atmosphere. It slipped out via panes spanning entire walls. Their panes, slender and ill-sealed, it slipped along halls that stretched endlessly, pursued by currents infiltrating every crevice and seam. The design aimed to awe, not to soothe. Guests marveled at the splendor. Help trembled in the gloom, and amid the awe and the tremors, the warmth simply evaporated. An odd entry from a period builder's record exposes the clash between aesthetics and coziness. He recounts crafting a vast chamber for a lord's rural retreat, its dimensions balanced and ideal, its vaults ascending to awe-inspiring elevations. Once the mansion stood complete and the winter winds howled in, the lord of the estate grumbled endlessly about the biting chill. The designer proposed thick drapes and extra hearths to chase away the frost, but the nobleman balked, determined not to mar the elegant design, leaving the grand chamber as stunning yet icy as ever, a testament to choices that prized looks above coziness. You pictured the staff in that vast space, stoking flames that offered little heat, hauling fuel that seemed to vanish uselessly. You imagined them retreating to their own corners, those cramped attic nooks or dank cellar hideaways where the rafters hugged the ceiling low and the areas squeezed tight. Yet any heat generated lingered exactly where it mattered. In the grip of winter, the estate's pecking order flipped upside down. The upper class dwelled in luxury but shivered constantly. The help endured grim conditions and, on rare occasions, savored a hint of actual thaw. Those simple dwellings carried their burdens too, to be sure. Wood and coal cost a fortune, and the needy frequently did without. You recall evenings when the hearth went dark, and your mother bundled the whole family into a single pallet, heaping on every coverlet, garment, and rag she could scrounge to shield you all. You recall how the chill amplified the gnawing emptiness in your belly, sharpening the frost's edge. You recall dawns when frost etched patterns inside the panes, and your exhales clouded the room like mist. Hardship didn't pamper anyone, but it laid bare its pains, straightforward in what it required. The freeze arrived, and you met it as one, enduring or perishing outright. Within those lavish estates, the misery stayed veiled, cloaked in decorum and routine, entombed under veils of duty and facade. The household never witnessed the staff's tremors. The staff never confessed to the numbness. All stuck to their scripts. Heat for the elite, grit for the laborers, while winter's raw facts went unvoiced. You've mastered your role in this charade, offering grins and bows while feigning that your fingertips aren't stiff, your feet aren't throbbing, that the frost hasn't woven itself into your frame like an extra frame of bones. Yet in those humble abodes, no such charade existed. The household shared the shivers, the glow, or the middling state between, all in unity. The blaze was communal property. The coverings got passed around. The trials were collective, as was the perseverance. In the solitary stretches of the mansion's midnight hush, you sometimes long for that. You yearn for the sensation of facing the cold alongside those who cherished you, not stoking comfort for folks who scarcely notice your presence. The reverie starts to slip away. The cabin's boundaries melt into gloom. Your mother's features soften into recollection. You're drifting back to the garret chamber, the slim cot, the stingily measured heat of a domestic's existence. That unpretentious shelter faded from reach the instant you stepped into employment. You bartered its faint glow for pay, for stability, for prospects beyond mere want. Yet on evenings such as this, as the frost crowds in and the vast estate creaks about you, you ponder whether the exchange truly paid off. Night deepens. The doubt lingers unresolved, and in that hazy border between sleep and alertness, you tug the covers closer and cling to any scrap of heat available. Echoes of voices reach you in pieces, wafting across eras like vapor seeping through door gaps. They come from souls you'll never encounter, help who toiled, labored, and quaked in places akin to this. Long before your time or even generations prior, their phrases endure in journals and correspondence, on tattered sheets saved by chance or design. Their script may have paled, but their intent shines through. They murmur of the freeze. They murmur of fortitude. They murmur of the tiny instances that enabled them to carry on. And as you heed them here, in your loft's obscurity, a sense of companionship eases your isolation. One such murmur is from a chambermaid called Hannah, who served at a Yorkshire estate during the 1840s. Her journal, hidden away and unearthed only posthumously, captures her routine with stark candor. On January 14th, she notes, "So cold this morning, the water in the pitcher had turned to ice. Had to break it with my fist before I could wash. My hands shook so badly I could barely button my dress." The phrasing is straightforward, stripped bare, yet it resonates in your very form. You recognize that frost. You recognize that quiver. Hannah's chill mirrors yours, divided solely by the passage of time. A fascinating fact that scholars often highlight is how uncommon such servant journals were. Supplies like paper ran dear, free moments were few, and reading and writing weren't guaranteed skills. The vast majority of domestics vanished without pen traces of their days, their stories persisting mainly through their masters' tales or stray notes in ledgers. The few diaries that surface offer invaluable glimpses into a realm that chose obscurity. Hannah's account spans almost 200 pages, spanning 3 years of duty until her wedding pulled her from the grand home. In her last note, she alludes to spring with a trace of gratitude. "The fires are banked now," she writes. "Thank God for warmth." A different perspective emerges from London, carried in a letter from a footman called Thomas to his mother in the rural countryside. Dated February 1862, it details his initial winter spent in an imposing city mansion. "You wouldn't imagine the chill here, Mother," he pens. "The place is enormous, so vast that no blaze can truly heat it. I remained standing rigidly for hours as the family eats, until my legs turn completely senseless. Yet I can't shift or protest. They insist a footman should resemble a statue, one that trembles in secret when unobserved. The wit is subtle, tinged with resentment, yet it persists. Thomas managed to find amusement in his misery, or perhaps just to confide it with a loved one who understood." Scholars still argue over the extent to which staff kept in touch with relatives during their employment. Certain homes permitted steady letters. Others curbed such exchanges, worried that longing for home might interfere with responsibilities. Surviving missives typically offer a guarded view, skipping the harshest struggles to spare family concern. Yet occasionally, honesty emerges. Thomas's note goes on with a plea. "Might you forward my heavy wool scarf, the one grandmother made? I could use it badly now." The ask seems straightforward, but its intent rings true. He felt the freeze deeply. He sought aid in the sole manner available to him. You reflect on your own messages to family, the deliberate phrasing you select, the grievances you hold back. Your mother frets plenty without learning the realities of your routine. Thus, you describe the estate's splendor, the meals in the staff quarters, the minor gestures from other housemaids. You skip mentions of the frost coating your pain, the stiffness in your hands, or the evenings when rest evades you because the frostbite lingers. Certain realities prove too burdensome to mail away. An odd entry from a lady's maid named Elena endures in an archive of Victorian letters. Addressing her sister in 1871, she recounts a surprising instance of comfort. "The lady handed me her discarded shawl this day," she notes. "She claimed it too frayed for her, yet it's superior to any garment I've possessed. I draped it over me, and, for an instant, sensed myself nearly as refined as she. Its coziness, not merely the fabric, but the act of sharing, eludes easy words. I suspect this generosity will stay with me forever. To the employer, the shawl was mere refuse, insignificant. For Eleanor, it became a gem. That divide in viewpoints reveals a tale beyond any scholar's grasp. Such minor generosities recur frequently in the remnants that remain. A chef permitting the kitchen girl to huddle near the stove when the overseer looked elsewhere. A steward who ignored staff pilfering additional fuel for their chambers. A tutor distributing her spare covers to the children's attendant on the fiercest evenings. These acts stayed hidden, undocumented, unseen by the upstairs dwellers. Still, they counted. They formed the bond that kept the staff intact amid winter's assault. You've experienced these gestures too. The veteran servant who showed you how to line your feet with newsprint inside your hose. The extra padding from the sheets offered protection beyond mere cloth. The chef who reserved a mug of soup for you on the bitterest dawns, thrusting it at you with a roughness masking deeper care. The footman who once slung his jacket around you upon spotting your shudders in the hallway, then departed swiftly to dodge your gratitude. These instances never make it into journals. They dwell solely in recollection, in the lingering heat they provided. The echoes soften now, withdrawing into the past, isolating you in your chamber's gloom. Hannah, Thomas, Elelanina, they existed, toiled, persevered. Their accounts span years to touch you, bearing the burden of bygone frosts. You join their narrative, extending the line of household workers who confronted the bite and pressed on. One day, maybe, another will uncover your notes, your record, your scraps of honesty. One day, another will encounter your lines and discover solace in company. But that's distant, unimaginable ahead. Presently, it's just this: the loft space, the meager cover, the heat from a companion nearby. The sounds have hushed, though their essence remains. You're far from the pioneer trembling here, nor the final one, and in that awareness lies a quiet reassurance. The gust buffets the pane, shaking the iced-over surface. You shut your eyes, surrendering to the shadows, borne away on whispers from predecessors. They made it through. So shall you. The evening cradles you softly, and you slumber. This dawn feels altered. You sense it prior to lifting your lids, prior to quitting the shelter of your bedding, prior to your soles meeting the icy boards. The light's character has shifted. The light filters in through the icy patterns on the pane, carrying a tenderness absent the day before, a subtle hint of what's approaching. You remain motionless briefly, attuned to the sounds, and detect another alteration. The quiet has shifted. The relentless gusts battering the structure for what feels like ages have subsided, giving way to a near-total hush. Spring approaches. Not immediately, not the next day, yet inevitably. The protracted ordeal draws to a close. Over time, you've grown adept at interpreting these subtle cues, the minor transformations signaling the season's pivot. Today's frost clings less stubbornly to the glass, softening along the borders kissed by sunlight. The atmosphere up in your garret, though chilly, has shed that piercing bite it's held since late fall. Your own frame seems altered too, less rigid, as though your limbs are starting to unwind from an unconscious strain. Winter yields ground bit by bit, and even if it lashes back fiercely prior to its ultimate defeat, the withdrawal is underway. Downstairs, staff track the cycles, much like inmates tallying time on stone. It's a pattern you've observed across every residence in your service. The subdued tallying, the vigilant observation, the fervent wish that every frosty dawn edges you nearer to thaw. A few keep makeshift tallies, etching marks in concealed spots or shifting pebbles between coat linings. Many just sense it instinctively. Their forms are calibrated to the pulses of daylight and chill that outpace any timepiece. As hours stretch and shadows recede, a subtle uplift stirs in the quarters below. Postures ease. Chatter brightens. Winter's burden lightens just a touch. Scholars often highlight a fascinating aspect of the Victorian era's grueling timeline: the significance of key observances. Candlemas on the 2nd of February marked winter's halfway point, the juncture where equal parts freeze lay behind and ahead. The help scanned for omens that dawn, convinced clear skies foretold extended chill, while overcast ones heralded and sooner bloom. Such folklore provided solace, a means to sense predictability and thus persevere. Accuracy of the forecasts was secondary to the comfort of trust. Belief in renewal sometimes stood as the sole anchor. You get up and move to the casement, laying your hand on the chilled surface. It's frigid, yet not searingly so, not the sort that numbs flesh in moments. Beads of moisture gather where your touch thaws the rime. Beyond, the heavens loom in muted silver, burdened with vapors that could unleash showers rather than flakes. Precipitation would be a blessing. It signals mercury climbing past the freeze. It recalls the earth to gentleness. Experts still quarrel over Victorian domestics' harsher season, whether the colder months outstripped the warmer ones in misery. Certain voices claim heat imposed its torments. Sweltering lofts, rotting provisions, ceaseless efforts to ventilate estates. Counterarguments cite vital statistics, revealing surges in fatalities amid peak freezes, deeming winter the clear foe. Reality probably differed per estate, locale, and yearly whims, but those in service concurred broadly. The depths were the adversary. Renewal meant rescue, and the interval hinged on fortitude. As you make your way down the steps, the manor shifts in feel. The passages, icy conduits for so long, now register as simply brisk, a tolerable edge unseen since the leaves turned. The blazes you kindle today ignite more readily, flare more vividly, as if the fuel yearns to join the seasonal shift. The household appears touched too. At the morning repast, the lady's tone lifts. The young one's mirth echoes unbound through the corridors. All have anticipated, all have reckoned the days. Now, finally, that reckoning nears completion. A Victorian horticultist's diary entry sums the delight of frost's fade with stark grace. Spotted the initial crocus this day, it notes. Violet thrust amid the rime, akin to a modest defiant banner. Shared it with the scullery girl, and tears came. We're weary beyond words of the freeze. The scene lingers in your mind, a petal and a sobbing helper. Endurance's grace embodied in one vivid violet. No such blooms have appeared for you, but now you peer expectantly, eyeing the iced earth from any vantage, awaiting that initial burst of hue. Duties persist unabated for the moment. Blazes to stoke, pails to tote, scuttles of fuel to drag from below. The frost nips sharply outdoors, deadens your hands on the wash lines, and seeps via gaps in your overhead sill after dark. The season hasn't fully relented, yet its hold slackens. You sense it as the rime dissolves more swiftly from the spout. The sheets now hang on the lines and catch the breeze more swiftly, while the sunlight stretches out a bit further into the dusk before yielding to night. Memories flood back of the harsh winters in your mother's humble dwelling, the grand estates where you've toiled, the cramped sleeping quarters and drafty hallways that shaped your world. Everyone dragged on forever in the moment, only for spring to arrive like a wondrous gift. The pattern endures relentlessly, yet reliably. Winter arrives, winter fades. What feels like unending chill reveals its fleeting nature, and life, resilient and unyielding, presses forward. Your fellow servants sense the change as well. The atmosphere in the servants' hall during supper feels more relaxed. They're eager to savor their tea, swap tales, and chuckle at humor that a month prior might have fallen flat. One brings up Easter, distant yet suddenly within reach. Another muses on the gardens ahead, the blossoms unfurling, the crops sprouting. Prospects sharpen into view once more, no longer veiled by drifts of snow and frost. That delicate spark of hope, the subtlest kind of comfort, starts to rekindle. As you ascend the steps to your room, a faint smile tugs at your lips, worn and cautious, yet genuine. The attic will remain chilly this evening, the covers sparse, the warming pan essential, but a subtle turn has occurred. An inner guide now tilts toward light rather than shadow. You'll make it through this season. You've already done so. The harshest days recede. Gentler ones await. Frost clings to the pane, but it's fragile, sheer, nearly graceful. Beyond it, the earliest evening stars pierce the sky, sharp and wintry, yet oddly more welcoming after so long. Spring draws near. You sense it deep in your core, your veins, the soft assurance nesting in your heart. Twilight envelops you softly, and as slumber arrives, it eases you into dawn with a touch of mercy. The hearth in the grand room dims to a soft glow. Its blaze dwindled to embers twinkling like far-off lights in the gloom. Here you are in the servants' hall, perched nearby. The labors of the day concluded at last. Weariness weighs on you, a soothing sort of fatigue. Your companions have retired, their steps echoing faintly upward, their chatter melting into hush. Solitude wraps around you by the waning fire, with your reflections, amid the stillness draping the manor like fresh powder. This twilight interlude between tasks and rest is your favorite. The estate pauses, as if time unwinds, and the hearth murmurs faintly, a soothing murmur. Shadows play across the panels, comforting forms that have shared your vigils through endless evenings. The chill lurks just outside the fire's embrace, yet for the moment it holds back. For the moment, security holds. Reflections turn to the trials of recent months. Iced dawns and sore palms, frigid loads borne up stairways without end, buckets lugged along passages like frozen veins, scant bedding and huddled sleeps, chilblains and sniffles, the tiny acts of care that sustained you. You've traversed the deepest shadows of the season and stepped into clearer air, not untouched, but whole. That's a source of quiet strength, profound and inner, beyond any blaze's reach. A stray notion surfaces from some book or fancy of yours. Folklore holds that the body retains traces of heat, that your frame recalls coziness even after it's gone. It rings true as you linger in the afterglow, sensing remnants of each blaze you've stoked, each mug you've cradled, each scrap of ease wrested from the frost. Those traces dwell within, stacked like the layers of your undergarments, shielding against the bite. The comfort you've claimed endures as your own. No frost can strip it away. Silence blankets the manor. The family slumbers in their cozy chambers. Your peers doze on their slim pallets. Out there, rhyme dusts the earth, tracing it in gleam and pallor. But by this hearth, serenity reigns. The day's battles concluded. Dawn promises fresh trials, fresh bite, fresh toil. Yet dawn feels remote, a world apart. This evening is yours alone. Scholars might still quarrel over the contentment of folks in your station, weighing hardships and pay, harshness and mercy, the hidden existences trailing the era's mighty homes. But in this seat, you grasp a truth they'll never quite capture. Joy isn't an unbroken tide. It's an instant, a sigh, a gleam of hearthlight piercing the void. And right now, fulfillment settles in. The warmth envelops you. The manor rests. You've weathered it all. The blaze ebbs further, curling inward like blossoms at dusk. The glow eases into a subtle radiance, touching just the heart of the chamber without stretching to its borders. Your lids weigh down, your respiration eases, and your frame eases into the seat supporting you. The lingering heat from the coals extends to you once more, a parting offering as slumber approaches. Allow your shoulders to slacken. Place your hands in your lap, palms open, digits relaxed. The labors are complete. The hearths are tended. The manor is protected. All inside its walls are secure, you included. Above all, you. This respite is yours by right, claimed through each load of fuel hauled, each set of steps climbed, each chill endured, and each task fulfilled. The evening belongs to you alone. Embrace its embrace. The chill beyond these walls holds no power over you. The ice patterns on the panes are mere designs. Lovely, yet remote. No cause for alarm. The breeze has hushed to a murmur, and that murmur weakens, softening further until it vanishes completely. Silence reigns now. Tranquility prevails, marked solely by the even cadence of your inhalations, deliberate and unhurried, guiding you further into repose. You feel the warmth. Whisper it inwardly. Let the phrase seep into your core. You feel the warmth. The blaze has fulfilled its role, and now your form retains the heat, nurturing it as if it were a treasured possession. The covers await in your quarters, the warming vessel still retaining a trace of heat within the linens. Yet there's no urgency to stir, not just yet. For the moment, merely remain seated, merely inhale, merely permit the surroundings to blur into gentleness. Contemplate the season of renewal on the horizon, the early blooms thrusting upward through the ice, violet and resilient. The extended daylight, the milder evenings, the sunlight reclaiming its gentle hold on the soil. It lies before you, expectant, assured. But there's no need to grasp at it. It arrives on its schedule just as ever. In this instant, grant winter its concluding moments. Allow the shadows to enfold you like a mantle. The obscurity harbors no threats. It offers solely renewal. The coals flicker once again, a pulse of illumination in the hushed space. Your gaze shuts, and you yield without resistance. Visions from the hours past float by. The stove's coziness, the garret's bite, the countenances of your companions in service, the burden of the scuttle, the vapor ascending from the laundry, the crystals dissolving under your touch on the glass. They glide away like passing vapors, like fleeting shades, like recollections already slipping from grasp. Release them. They shall re-emerge with dawn. Yet dawn is absent here. Here exists solely this: the heat you've collected, the repose you've merited, the quiet that demands nothing, seeks nothing, but cradles you tenderly as you slip toward slumber. You dwell in safety, you dwell in comfort. The enduring frost has forged your resilience, and the approaching thaw will bring delight. But this evening, stillness suffices. The hearth fades to its last glimmer, a muted amber sheen that will dull to ash by daybreak. The estate quiets around you, beams and rock, masonry and stucco, all sighing faintly in the gloom, and you sigh in harmony, woven into its cadence, into its tale. Yet another spirit who discovered solace amid a harsh realm and clung steadfast until the cycle shifted. Slumber now. The darkness is kind, and daybreak will bide its time. Recline as those before you did, as you've rightfully won the privilege to do.